What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball, and more importantly, welcome back to spreadsheets. I know it's been a moment, it's been a little bit of time, but we are back on the spreadsheets, and we're here to answer a really important question today. Who is getting paid too much in the NBA and who isn't? Who's got good contracts? Who's got bad contracts? It's a conversation that I see happening like on basketball, Twitter, just the internet in general. Like, this guy's paid too much, this guy isn't. Well, what if we actually had a number to kind of help us determine if it is a good contract, if it is good value based off the actual production of the player? Well, that's what I've gone and done today, and I'm going to kind of take you guys through that process. But before we do that, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment to my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so. We've been doing a bunch of like kind of interesting little videos on the channel recently, like taking a look at like overrated players. We made a whole like role player statistic to kind of help evaluate the best role players. So this is kind of in the same vein as that, but you know, it's the off season. We're trying to figure out some creative things to do, and I figure I can use some of my analytics skills to kind of help us create some fun statistics. So if you like that stuff, make sure you give it a like and everything. But yeah, let's get into the numbers. Alrighty, spreadsheet time. And by the way, Yanana's a fucking hoe. No, I'm sorry. I know that was a bit aggressive. I saw that YouTube had like changed its like terms and conditions, so now you're allowed to like swear like immediately in videos, and it's not getting demonetized. So this is a way for me to experiment with that. So yeah, start out your day with that. There you go. But anyway, so the premise of all of this just kind of started because, right, it's been free agency, and you see people getting contracts, and you see people being like, that's too much or that's too little. I don't know. And how do you really ever tell, like, outside of just kind of a gut feeling? Because you've kind of heard me say on the channel, like, oh, this much is kind of how much you should expect to be paid if you're this level of player, right? This is how much you should expect to be paid if you're that level of player, right? Who's got a bad contract? Who doesn't? So I've made a statistic to tell us who, like, the best valued contracts are in the NBA, and obviously who are the worst. And then we'll take a look at teams and see which teams have the best contracts overall. But before we get into the results, let's talk about data itself. So this is the background of the spreadsheet, right? You got a bunch of stuff going on back here that I am going to walk you guys through. I want to take some time and kind of explain the statistics, the reasoning of how I kind of developed this this little statistic here, and I've got some logic off to like the sides and stuff that you guys can read for those of you that are a bit more curious about how all of this stuff works. But yeah, I just took like an hour or two yesterday and kind of developed this. I thought it was kind of a cool little project. So here's what we got going on here. So obviously we got players off here to the left. Oh, and a little secret for those of you in here. I strategically left one player out of this list of people here. And I'll scroll through like the display tab at the end, but I strategically left out like one NBA player. Just one in particular. And I want you guys to try to figure out which one it is. So like leave me a comment on that. I don't know. I just kind of thought that would be a fun thing to do. But anyway, so we got players over here, right? We've got the teams that they play for. Then the first statistic that we have here are the EPM numbers. You guys are probably pretty familiar with EPM at this point. It's something that we commonly see on like the Dunks and Threes website here. EPM is this really, really cool kind of all-encompassing statistic that tells you how good a player is at like offense, defense, and then just like overall as a basketball player. And mind you, every statistic has its gaps, and so that's why we try to kind of fill those gaps with other statistics in this. So EPM's been a big thing on this channel, and so we continue to have that here. In particular, we're going to be using just the overall EPM. That statistic is going to serve as, and I'm going to move over here for a second, that statistic is going to make up 50% of our weighted equation here. Basically, in order to get this number, we need an equation that has, or that factors in a couple different statistics, right? And we're going to normalize those statistics to make up the scale, if you would, right? So overall EPM is going to make up 50% of this statistic. Why? Because it's kind of just the core performance metric. This is just like, hey, how good is this NBA player, right? And that's how we're going to at least start to use it. So you'll see here in column M, we've got the EPM score, and what we've done here is we've normalized it. Normalized just means that we're kind of taking like a range of numbers and we're changing it to a more like compact scaling. So if you are the top player in EPM, you're going to have a score of 50, right? Because we want it to be 50% of the overall score. It's got to add up to 100. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got a 50. Jokic is like the next highest guy. He got like a 49.1. So everybody's been scaled to this 0 to 50 number here. So that's EPM. Another thing that we're using in this statistic is games played, because look, one thing I was thinking about when I was making this is like, take a Joel Embiid, right? Joel Embiid's a phenomenal basketball player, but he's never available. And like, that's something that's a part of the conversation often I see online is they're like, yeah, they're paying all this money to a guy that never plays. And I think that's fair, right? You're paying these guys to play basketball games, but if they're not available, I feel like we should take that into account. So we've got games played here, and this statistic is going to become a little bit more important after we kind of make the weighted score itself. The next statistic we're using is estimated wins. Estimated wins is this statistic that basically says, hey, how many wins did a player truly contribute to this year in the NBA? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is at the top of that one as well. Shout out Shai. And so estimated wins is going to make up 35% of our equation here. And the reason we're using estimated wins is the same reason we actually brought estimated wins into our role player statistic here. Again, I recommend you guys go watch that video. I think it was kind of interesting, and I'm hoping I'm getting a little bit better at explaining these, but it reflects cumulative impact, and it makes up for the EPM availability gap. So what does that mean? So estimated wins, the kind of cool thing about that is if you're not playing, you're not gonna, you can't actually like have the stat be effective. EPM doesn't take into account how many games you actually played. It's just when you were on the basketball court. So you could play 3 games and have a really good EPM, right? But with estimated wins, if you're not playing, you're not like adding to this statistic by any means, right? You have to actually play for something to happen to the statistic. So, because it can go up, it can go down, right? So this is kind of a way to fill in the gap for EPM, right? It's another way to evaluate how well you're contributing to a team with actually taking into account some availability. So that's why we use estimated wins with EPM often. The next thing we got here is obviously we have 2025, 2026 salaries. And there is an important note that I want you guys to know about this video is this is based off of 2024, 2025 data, right? So this previous season, but it's based off 2025, 2026 salaries. There's kind of a reason for doing that, right? And there's a bit of logic as to why I did that, but there's also some holes in that we'll talk about later. But I just kind of wanted to make that known. So how does salary actually like play a factor in this? We'll talk about that in a second, but I want to talk about the third statistic in our weighted score first. So by the way, the estimated wins, the highest score you could get is a 35, lowest would be a 0, right? So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander crushing it to start, right? The next statistic that we're talking about is just minutes per game. I figured I needed another statistic in there that just kind of added some value to people that are actually playing on the court and like playing a certain amount of minutes, right? Because someone like a Mikal Bridges, right? He's on the court so much that's just got to have a little bit more value than other people. It's not a ton overall, but getting more minutes out of people is somewhat valuable. And again, there's some flaws with this, right? Because like the Thunder are really good. They're beating teams up all the time. So Shai comes out of the game a little bit earlier, but I kind of noted it here to help distinguish stars who play heavy minutes from high EPM like bench guys. So it's only worth 15% of the overall weight, but I thought it was kind of important to add it in here. So minutes per game right here in column K contributes directly to this minute score. So again, the highest score you could get is a 15, a lowest you could get is 0. And all of that gets added up into your overall score. The highest you could possibly get is a 100. Nobody's has a 100 here because you would have to get number 1 in EPM, estimated wins, and minutes. I guess Shai could have gotten it if he played the most minutes per game this year, but he got a 95. He's got the highest overall score. So now that we've got this like overall score, right, and this is kind of how we're determining value in a player, right, then we're going to make an adjusted score based on availability here, right? Because we want to reward people that are available and punish those that, you know, have been injured. And that sucks, right? Because you can't control like injuries and whatnot. But again, it's important. The players like Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Joel Embiid, right? Just to name a few that weren't very available this last year, they're not gonna be worth as much because they're not on the court. So what we ended up doing is we ended up taking like their games played, right? and we basically divided that by 82, so how often they're available, and we multiplied their score by that. Basically just applying a direct multiplier and saying like, hey, however much you're available, that's going to impact your score. So Shea missed, it looks like 10 games this year, a little bit less than 10 games. So his score is not going to be affected much, but it is dropped. And so the only way you could possibly get a 100 in the metric that we've developed, and I think it's okay that nobody hits a 100 in this metric, is if you were number one in EPM, estimated wins, minutes, and you played all 82 games. So that would be perfect score, right? That's how you get an absolutely perfect score with this, right? Which makes sense because that would be the ultimate goal of a basketball player, right? Is to kind of be like, well, maybe that's not the ultimate goal, but that would be the ultimate value that a team could get out of this player, right? Is that they played all these minutes, they're really winning you basketball games, they're really, really good, right? It's that's the goal. So I think that's why it's okay that that nobody hit 100 in this instance. But regardless, it's there for us to kind of look at. Then we need to get the actual like value score. So how did we go about doing the value score then? Well, originally what I did is I was just like, oh, let me just take the actual score that they got here in column Q, this like adjusted availability score, and divide it by the salary, and we'll get something. And when I was looking at the results at first, I was like, okay, I'm kind of disproportionately affecting the higher salaried players. They make like so much more money than some of the other people that like all the good players are ending up at the bottom still of this rating. So that's not exactly what we want to do. So what I did was I kind of reworked the logic, and that's what you're going to see over here in this little column here. I kind of wrote out the logic in case you guys want to like take a second and really like read through it or whatever, but here's kind of what we ended up doing, is we ended up actually normalizing the salaries a little bit more. So like how we said we're normalizing numbers here, I went and normalized the salaries right here in column I. So the highest paid player, right, Steph Curry here, they got a 100 because they had the highest salary, and 0, the cheapest player in the NBA would have a 0. And what we did then is we went and found the inverse of that number, right? And let me explain that. I'm not a math teacher, so I'm not always the best at explaining this, but we wanted to add a multiplier to this score instead of just dividing something. So basically what we're doing is we're taking the inverse of whatever their normalized score is. In Steph Curry's case, it's a 0, and we're gonna what's the term for it? This is why I wrote stuff down. We're basically doing like a salary factor in this case, which means we're adding 1 plus whatever their inverse is, and we're going to multiply their availability based on that. So we're not punishing expensive players necessarily, right? Because in Steph Curry's case, he's the most expensive basketball player, so he's just going to get multiplied by 1. So he's expensive. Like teams are fine with paying good basketball players. That's why they get paid so much. We're not punishing them. But cheaper players, say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, we're going to multiply his score by 1.37. Right, so he gets a little bit of a benefit because his salary is quite a bit cheaper than a lot of the other guys on here. So let's go back over to kind of like the logic over here. Cheap players, so the players that have low normalized salaries, they get a little modest boost, right? In Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's example, right, we talked about that 1.37 boost. It's not a huge boost, but it's a boost nonetheless. Expensive stars, the normalized salary near 100, they don't really get a bonus, but they also don't get a penalty for that either, right? Because we've already penalized them based off of like other things like availability and stuff like that. This prevents the overcorrection where elite players like Shai or Jokic get buried just because they're paid a lot, even though they're worth every single dollar of it, right? And so that's kind of why I went with that logic of it. Another reason, this is kind of just intuitive and it's scalable. We're not actually dividing by salary anymore. It causes like extreme compression when we do that. So like I said, I was having guys like Jokic, like towards the bottom, like the Devin Bookers of the world, and like again Shai was like somewhere in the middle, and I'm like, well, that just doesn't make like intuitive sense. Like that can't be right. So that's why I attacked it this way. Instead, we're scaling up or down based off of cost efficiency, which is what we actually care about in this, right? Who's giving us the most bang for our buck? And that's kind of the point of the video. It aligns with real world thinking. Teams don't care just about cheapness, unless you're the Chicago Bulls or apparently like the Indiana Pacers or shit like that. They care about value relative to production, right? That's the whole point of it. A player who's paid $35 million but provides $50 million plus worth of performance, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is incredibly valuable. This method kind of reflects that, and then the multiplier is also contained since it's a 1 plus the salary factor. The range is only like from 1 to 2, so we're not actually exploding the values at all. We're just kind of nudging them in the appropriate direction. So that's kind of the logic between everything. I know that's a lot of like statistics and everything, and I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to explain this the best that I can. I know not everybody's like a stats person or whatever. I personally sucked at school in like math, and I hated it, and I just found I didn't like school. Once you actually put like interesting things in front of me, I found I'm actually pretty good at math and statistics, which is kind of interesting. So I don't know, maybe that speaks to you guys about it. So anyway, what we've done now is we've basically, and I'll click into the function for those of you that like using Excel and like sheets and stuff all the time. This is the actual formula or whatever. But now this is the value over salary, basically. So we've used that kind of inverse salary multiplier, and now we've got this awesome score. I also had like a cost per win here that just literally looks at like how much a player's salary was and their estimated wins, because I thought maybe I'd use that at some point, but I really didn't end up using it. These numbers over here are simply to just like help us normalize the data set. You need a max and a min in a data set in order to normalize it, so just know that that's why that's over there. This is just, I needed to list out all the teams for the other display. But yeah, I think that's everything that's kind of going on in the background of this sheet. So just a quick recap, right? We've got EPM, we've got estimated wins, and we have minutes per game. These make up our weighted score right here. 50% of it is EPM, 35% of it is estimated wins, and 15% of it is the minutes. That's how we get our overall score of 0 to 100. We then adjust it by how available a player was, right? Just because it's important to penalize those that weren't available, and to reward those that were. So that's why we adjust it from there. And then from there, we end up using that whole salary logic here of kind of this inverse salary factor. And that's what gives us our score here. So now, this is the interesting part, right? This is where we actually go and take a look at the display itself. Let's zoom out just a little bit. Yeah, that's a good place to start with it. So right here, these are our top 30 players in the NBA, again, based off of 2024-2025 data, so data from last year, but 2025-2026 salary. And again, there's some context points I'm going to talk about, and these are just the ones that I've thought of so far. I didn't put like infinite amount of effort into this, right? Like this isn't going to be a tool that my company sells or anything at this point, but these are just some context points that I thought of up to this point. So, but here's the top 30 players. So what this means is these are the most valuable players per their contract, right? These are the guys you're getting the most value from in the NBA. So towards the top here, you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, number 1. No surprise, right? He was one of the best players in the NBA this year, if not the best player in the NBA, and he's not paid like he's the best player in the NBA, right? So it makes sense that he's there. I also put the games missed here because, you know, missing games it's a big deal in this statistic, right? So I put it here in case you guys were curious, and I highlighted the ones that missed 0 games this year so that you can see. Ivica Zubac is number 2. Again, not a surprise. He was a high impact player this year, and he really doesn't make that much. Christian Brown, another one. Peyton Pritchard, Jared Allen, Jalen Williams. Again, this is passing the eye test, right? Austin Reeves, Amen Thompson. Shout out the elite role players here, and Tamani Kamara, Dyson Daniels. Again, these are the things that I was like, yeah, this stat's working, right? Because we know that these players are good, but they're not paid like it. Like Austin Reeves makes like $13 million or something like that. Then we have like the Derek Whites, Chris Paul, Tyler Hero, Brook Lopez, Nikola Jokic is still on there, right? He's still really valuable, even though he's one of the highest paid players in the NBA. So that's how I kind of know the stats working. Jalen Wells, extremely valuable as a rookie this year. Mikal Bridges, Chris Dunn, Ty Jerome, James Harden, guys kind of rounding out that 20 to 30 range. Isaiah Joe, a lot of Thunder players on here, no surprise. Jaren Jackson Jr., Scottie Pippen Jr., Nikola Vucevic. Somebody trade for the guy, please. Keegan Murray, that was a name I was surprised to see on here. actually. And from just looking at it, I was like, okay, why is Keegan Murray like so high on this list? I wanted to kind of investigate that a little bit because his EPM isn't anything crazy. He was very available this year. His estimated wins is higher than you might think it is. His salary's pretty modest because he's still on a rookie deal, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, he kind of just slipped his way up into that list. So shout out Keegan Murray. We continue to be a Keegan Murray channel. Alperen Şengün is up here. Josh Hart, Anthony Edwards, Keon Ellis. I know Kings fans love seeing that. And then Jalen Duren for the Pistons. So kind of cool, actually. But let's talk about some potential context points that, again, I've thought of so far. If you have other ones, feel free to throw them into the comments or whatever, because, again, this isn't a perfect thing. It took me 2 hours to put it together. Context points. Certain players are going to play different minutes this year. Take Brook Lopez, for example. It's strongly going to impact 2 out of the 3 ratings. So take a look at Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez just signed a new deal this year, right? It's a much cheaper contract than what he's used to because he's going to be playing a different role this year, right? He is going to be playing a different role as kind of the backup center for the Clippers this year. Brook Lopez plays starter level, like good basketball, but now he's on a much cheaper contract, so his value is elevated right now. Like his contract is very valuable because we know the level of production we can get out of Brook Lopez on the basketball court. But this didn't take into account that, he's going to play different minutes this year. He's going to have a different role, so numbers might look different. So we're kind of making an assumption that players are going to maintain a certain level of performance going into the next year. That's really the only way we can look at the statistics. So I just kind of found that important to look into. This doesn't take into account how much money is guaranteed, because some players aren't on like guaranteed deals, and there's other factors that go into how much money a player makes by the end of the season. So maybe we should measure it differently, right? Like those are all factors that kind of go into things like incentives and stuff, but I just wasn't going to take the time to do that. Next point, teams don't always pay directly per performance. They pay in anticipation of improved performance sometimes. The example we use on the channel a lot of times is Jalen Johnson, because in front offices he's used as kind of like a marker amongst things. Jalen Johnson got like $30 million, or he gets like $30 million a year, and that's basically because Atlanta saw him as kind of like rising, like good NBA player, right? So we're kind of paying you in anticipation that while we're overpaying for your level of production right now, by the time you're at the end of your contract, we're actually going to be getting better value out of things. So that's some context to kind of give the GMs a little bit of credit. Sometimes that's how they're evaluating these deals, is that they're like, we might not be getting full value right now, but full value later by the end of your contract when you're even better. So that's something to take into account. We don't want to judge the teams for that. I have new deals are potentially penalized because the cap grows. So like people that are on newer contracts sometimes are making more money because there's more money in the salary cap to be given out just in general. That we have, I don't think it's affecting this data too much just because the cap hasn't increased like anything like really substantial in a lot of the contracts out here, and a lot of the money's just going to top players anyway. But just wanted to kind of note that. Finally, I wrote this like just before starting this. I'm like, just realized getting a DNP, so it did not play, and an injury should probably be noted differently, but I don't really have time for that. Like, I guess in a perfect world, we would kind of go in and measure the DNPs versus the injuries and kind of have that reflect differently in here, because like some of the guys towards the bottom of the list, like they just didn't get on the basketball court, but maybe we should be penalizing them regardless for not being good enough to get on the court, but that could be the coaching, right? I don't know, right? That's just something to take into account. And minutes as well. Guys like Keon Ellis got this high and they hardly played at points last year. For whatever reason, people couldn't quite figure out why he wasn't getting more minutes out there. So maybe he should be even higher on the list if maybe coaching was a little bit better. So things to think about with this. I have a general just takeaway, like what should you be able to say after looking at these numbers. I wrote, this model evaluates the contract value for 2025-2026 based off a 2024-2025 performance. It rewards players who produce like stars last season, but are still on team-friendly deals going forward. If every team kept players exactly as they are right now, who's offering the most bang for their buck this next NBA season? And that's what this stat is looking at here. We'll go through this list just a little bit more because there's some things I want to point out, and then we'll go over the team stats here at the end. But I kind of just want to scroll through here and point out some things that stand out to me as I go through it. Like Damian Lillard here missed quite a few games, but he's still this impactful. That kind of tells you how good Damian Lillard was last year, and because he made a lot of money. At points last season, but obviously now his contract's a little bit smaller going into the next season. So look at how valuable he is, right? When that happens. Now that you get him on a much more team-friendly deal, but obviously he's going to be injured this next year, so his score would drop pretty drastically by next year. Just moving on, shout out Jaden McDaniels, who didn't miss any games, and he comes in here. You see like the Aaron Wiggins of the world. Like I love seeing guys like that up here at awards, but you're still seeing good players like Cade Cunningham, Bam Adebayo. There's Mike Conley there. That's kind of cool to just take a look at. I could probably zoom in on this a little bit more so it's a little bit easier for you guys to see. Like the Donovan Mitchells are still up here. Here's a couple guys that missed like 0 games last year, and Harrison Barnes and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They're up here. Here's Giannis. Victor Wembanyama, obviously having a high impact, even though he missed a large amount of games last year, because we just know how good Wemby is as a basketball player. And obviously he's on a cheap contract, right? Because he's on a rookie contract. So that's obviously helping to increase his value overall. And I know that some people will probably be like, well, rookies can't really like control their contracts, but that still doesn't change like their value at all. So I think that that's fine, and that doesn't need to matter. We've got some other people that didn't miss any games in Champagny here, and Jalen Green actually having like pretty solid value for the amount he was contributing on the basketball court. So that was kind of interesting to look at. There's Buddy Hield with 0 games missed. Like are there any other 0 missed games here? Just scrolling down the list. I'll go back up or whatever, but no, there's no more like 0 missed games that fall like that low. Are there any other like a lot of missed games that still have pretty solid value? Like a Cam Johnson looks like it. And we know Cam Johnson's on an extremely team-friendly deal. He makes like $20 million a year only. So that's where he kind of comes into things. I want to see where else, like there's Steph Curry all the way down here, didn't miss a ton of games this last season, but obviously he's the highest paid player in the NBA, so that's how much value you were getting relative to him. Obviously, maybe not like his best NBA season ever, but still a very good player overall. We're still kind of in like these green numbers here. There's like 370 players with contracts right now, so that's what it is. And a reminder, I left one player off this list, so see if you can figure out which one it is and leave me a comment about it. Here's LeBron down here right next to Zach LaVine. 2 players making quite a bit of money right now. The Jordan Pooles of the world. Now we're starting to get into players that missed a few more games, and the Kyrie Irvings, right? That's kind of interesting to take a look at. There's Paolo Banchero as well. Probably a guy, if he didn't miss so many games, is probably a little bit more valuable than where he is. Let's see what else we want to take a look at here. There's like the Ja Morants of the world, maybe not giving you as much production as you might expect to see. Shout out Ron Holland, only missing 1 game. Like a lot of the younger guys out there probably going to end up a little bit lower on the list because they're not contributing as much right now, right? And that's just kind of what it is. So we're kind of getting into a little bit more negative value contracts now as we get into this red, because this is kind of below that 50 percentile threshold. So these are technically not positive valued contracts at this point. So kind of going down here, you see the LaMelo Balls of the world, the Anthony Davis, a lot of games missed and probably relative to some level of production. I mean, Anthony Davis is great when he's out there, but lack of availability, a lot of money being paid. That hurts. Guys that don't miss many basketball games that are down here, that's obviously a little bit concerning, right? The Simone Fontecchios of the world, the Yves Missy, but Yves Missy is a rookie, right? The production just isn't that good right now. The Chet Holmgrens are down here because they missed a lot of games. Shout out Charis Walker, Dalen Terry for kind of being down here. Here's Bub Carrington. He played every single game, but he's all the way down here again because he wasn't that great last year, but that's okay. They're a rookie, right? And that's just is what it is. Nobody's going to be like upset that they're paying him what they're paying him at this point. Let's see who else is interesting. There's Terry Rozier. That's probably no surprise to Heat fans to kind of see him all the way down here. Patrick Williams for my other Bulls fans out there. Isaiah Collier, 11 games only missed this last season. That was like his were probably DNPs too, honestly. And now you're getting into the people that missed like heavy amounts of games, right? Like the DeJounte Murrays of the world, the Paul Georges. They're kind of down here. Anybody else that's really interesting? I mean, we're going to get to like the Joel Embiids at a certain point. Like Terrence Shannon Jr. here was a bunch of DNPs, so he's kind of being negatively affected by this because he didn't get to play in a ton of basketball games when we know he probably should. Like a Herb Jones is down here because he just wasn't available. So now we're really getting into the not very available basketball players, or the DNPs, the Robert Williams, the Mitchell Robinsons, the always injured, the Joel Embiids, the Brandon Ingrams, right? Gigi Jackson missed a large portion of the season. Matisse Thybulle, right? A lot of these guys like Grant Williams, major injuries last year. Trey Mann as well. Bronny James is down here. There's Cody Williams, the guy we always talk about. He's the lowest in all the EPMs, but he's not the bottom here. The bottom here is Taylor Hendricks. He missed 79 games, right? It's kind of hard to make up for that, him and Isaiah Jackson, even though we know that these aren't, well, we don't know for sure about Taylor Hendricks as to what kind of basketball player he is, but like we know Isaiah Jackson's a solid level contributor in the NBA. He's just injured at the moment. So yeah, that's just kind of looking through the list overall and kind of getting a sense for like how you should read this list. Again, I scrolled through the whole thing so you can kind of take a look at it as needed. Now what I figured I'd do is I just went and made a little like team average here. I'm like, okay, which teams are getting the most bang for their buck on their current like salary or out of their whole like team salary right now. I noted that I could do like a minutes based average, but I just kind of want a wide team view, and I think just evaluating all the contracts in general is probably good. So this is just an average score of all of them. The Detroit Pistons come up on top. Their team's not very expensive, so that doesn't necessarily surprise me. Oklahoma City, no surprise to see them there. The Minnesota Timberwolves getting a lot of bang for their buck. The Spurs, the Rockets, the Magic, kind of up there. Then you start to get down to those middle tier teams, and you have my Chicago Bulls, who are just always in the middle of everything. And if you count them up, they are number 16. So they're like directly in the middle of getting value for everything. So the Bulls are just in the middle. The New Orleans Pelicans getting the least value here. The Sixers, two teams that were extremely injured this last season. The Charlotte Hornets, not the best rosters in Utah, Washington, Brooklyn. You kind of expect to see them. I kind of figured Toronto would be closer to the bottom of things just because they had a lot of players miss games. They've got a pretty expensive roster overall. The New York Knicks surprisingly down here as well. I found that kind of interesting, actually, but I guess they just have some other players kind of weighing them down, and that's where the minutes could affect things a little bit more. But overall, yeah, kind of interesting to take a look at that. So now you can see which teams are spending their money most effectively right now. It's kind of something for you guys to look at. But yeah, that was a lot of stats that I just kind of talked about in numbers. I hope that made sense. I hope you guys like videos like this. I think it's a little bit different. It's putting in a little bit more effort into the YouTube channel than I guess I normally do. So I don't know. I just hope that you guys have fun with this stuff like I do. It's fun to put these things together. If you guys are ever interested as well, I might do like a live stream at some point where we kind of just teach you guys about like Google Sheets, Excel, things like that, and maybe we build something on there together, because being able to do stuff like this is just like incredibly valuable in life in general. If you can do stuff like this, man, like people will pay you money for stuff like my business started from me just being good at like Google Sheets and Excel and being able to creatively think with data. And now it's expanded kind of off Google Sheets, and now I have like web platforms and stuff for like the NBA, the college, and like the other international teams that I work for, right? But I don't know. If you guys are ever interested in something like that, I think it could be cool. I'd love for you guys to have the value that I have out of this, because just being able to get answers and derive insights are super valuable in today's world. So let me know what you guys think. But yeah, tell me how your favorite team did, or where your kind of favorite players are. See if you can find the missing player in this list. I think it could be a fun little exercise for somebody. But yeah, no, I appreciate you guys as always. Let's move on to the comment of the video. Alrighty, y'all. Comment of the video is coming from our most valuable trade chips video. This was just a video looking into what's the most valuable asset on every NBA team that they could trade right now. And the comment comes from CWJ1288. I don't know if you've gotten one of these before, but maybe, who commented, for the Wizards, wouldn't you think their cap space is their most valuable asset? The Wizards, I'm sure, will get more draft capital and take on bad contracts. They don't need all 100 plus million of the cap space next year. Just a thought, great video, watch to the end. So yeah, watch time. First of all, amazing. Thank you very much for that. And this is a phenomenal point. I was like, yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. But that truly is like the Wizards' best draft, or their best trade asset, is the fact that they can just absorb money. In economics, we learned that scarcity means value. Not many teams have cap space, so it's a scarce thing. The Wizards do, and they're like, this is the role that we play in the economy right now, and this is how we get ourselves ahead, is by taking on contracts that people don't watch and acquiring other assets. So just phenomenal point. I really, really liked that. But yeah, no, I appreciate the comment and the watch time. That is appreciated. And make sure you guys go join the Discord. Here, link in the description. We're talking basketball on there all the time. It's a good environment and everything. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching as always, and have a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much. Bye.